My name is Hampton Fancher, a writer, and I was involved with the movie Blade Runner.
For me, it was about empathy. And that was really important to me and will always be important because I think that's the solution to our problems, is feeling somebody else's pain.
Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep was published in 1968. Hampton Fancher at the time was a kick-around television actor living in Los Angeles with an incredible backstory that I found hard to believe at first. His father had been a prize fighter, and his mother a dancer. Bilingual, at 13 he changed his name to Mario Montejo. He actually ran away from home, ending up in Europe during his formative years. His varied career and body of work include roles as a dancer, an actor, a writer, and a director, amongst other things.
I never thought of myself as an actor. From the beginning, I thought of it very provisionally. I didn't expect to do anything as an actor. I didn't feel myself to be a very good actor, and I was a lazy actor. I kind of pretended to study and take it seriously, but I really secretly wasn't that serious about it. I refused to admit how frightened I was of not just acting, but if you're frightened of acting, it means you're frightened of life, I think. Acting is life. I knew that much. If I was lying as an actor, I was lying in my life. And the lie for me in the beginning, that it took me a few years to face, was that I was a frightened person, that I was terrified, that I had tension in me. I was nervous, and I was lying about it. I was redirecting that into an arrogance, into a fearlessness, into a pomposity, and it became part of my persona. I played characters like that.
Name's Tad Arlen.
It's my friend Mingo.
Mingo, howdy.
It's a pleasure indeed.
Does he always talk like that?
Bad guys, rapists and arsonists and cowards and misfits, dumb people. I played a lot of dumb guys.
Where's your mom, Elton?
I don't know. She ran off with that baby.
That baby?
He done it, I didn't.
Did what?
I didn't steal that baby. I didn't have nothing to do with it. Neither did Ma.
Well, he's the one. He done it.
Looks that way, Fisher.
You must run quickly. If you meet him...
If I meet him, I'll kill him.
What happened?
I just shot myself in the foot.
What is it you want, Mr. Bass?
Well, I brung your boy home so your husband could whoop him for stealing pigs.
Dog.
Well, I didn't think he missed just one little pig.
I'd rather starve than have my boy a thief.
What do you want?
Right now, I'll settle for how, why, and by whom Boswell was framed.
Oh, dig him, a dreamer.
You know, that libel case won't come to trial for 2 years. Now, that ought to give me a lot of time to get you to cooperate. I don't really need this. It just saves me the trouble of proving that I don't.
Oh, wait a minute. I'm a good loser, really. Easy come, easy go.
I was more serious about writing and more serious about directing. And I guess my little tragedy is I didn't get to direct as much as I want to.
The best thing we can do is stay out of the way.
Denzel Washington is Police Chief Quinn.
I'm in the way.
Robert Townsend is Morby. When there's trouble in paradise, you ain't seen nothing like the mighty Quinn.
Hampton was a man taken by passion and intrigue. What led him to writing Blade Runner was chiefly economics.
Jim Maxwell is a close friend, and I said, I think science fiction's gonna happen. He says, you know who Philip K. Dick is? I said, no. He said, well, there's a book called The Android's Dream of Electric Sheep, and I said, okay, I'll read that. I read it. I didn't like it that much, but I thought, okay, that's commercial. Here's a through line, bureaucratic detective chasing androids.
In 1971, Brian Kelly, a broad, handsome television star known for the lead role in Flipper, was riding one of Hampton's motorcycles around while Hampton trailed behind him. Brian fell, The accident left him paralyzed on the right side.
He was going 5 miles an hour and went over a curb and fell over and hit his head. Bingo, just hit it in the wrong place. My nanny was on the bike with him, and my daughter's on the bike with me. And it was nothing. It was just a fluke thing. I thought he was joking, in fact. I thought he was fucking with me, because we always did that. And he might have been, but then hurt himself.
Unable to work, he received money from a court settlement. But when the money started to run out, he asked Hampton to give him some ideas for a property they could produce.
And then it's 77, I guess. And, you know, I'm teaching acting. I'm washed up. I mean, there's nothing I can do. I stopped acting at 75. Then Brian calls and he says, I only have a few $1,000s left. There's no prospect of my getting anything. He'd lived high. And now I understood, and it was horrifying. And I said, I don't know what to tell you, man. It's just, I mean, the only thing we know about his properties, and maybe there's one I know that could be good, that it might be a thing to come.
Hampton gave Brian the name Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. He didn't think that Brian would be able to get it.
I had tried to option it before and not succeeded. I didn't know what else to tell him.
Hampton didn't think it was possible because in 1974, Hampton met with Phil with the intention of obtaining the rights to the book.
I'd been involved with Dick, and Dick was not involvable. I didn't think it could work. I thought he was crazy, you know? Not just crazy like my friends and me, you're crazy, but a bit really crazy maybe, because he get messages from somewhere, maybe. He thought I was a hustler. I mean, a Hollywood type hustler, and I'm not. You know, I wish I were. I was trying to be. But I guess I succeeded with him. I said, I should come here with a cigar. And because I don't even know what the fuck I'm doing. I don't know anything about this. I don't know. I'm not a producer. And I want to be, you know. I was sure he didn't like me. And I said that to him. He said, I'll see you next time, you know. And I said, I don't think so.
Hampton saw the commercial potential in the property. However, the rights had already been sold to a French company. Phil offered other book rights, but Hampton only wanted Electric Sheep.
I never made sense with him exactly. So I didn't succeed.
But Brian succeeded.
He then calls me a week later, and he got it for $2,000 or something like that. And then he took it to Michael Dealey, a great producer and a renowned producer, and Michael Dealey said, no way.
I had been pursued for about 2 years by Brian Kelly, who was a very close friend of mine, who had this idea in mind to make a movie based upon Dick's Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. And I first read it and thought I wasn't very interested.
He read the book and he said, it ain't a movie. And then Brian told me that, and then I said, that's nonsense, it does work. This is a very simple notion. A detective during the future after these mechanical creatures, what's simple? Come on, it works fine. He said, could you write that down? I said, no, come on. He said, just write it and I'll show that to Michael. So I wrote a page. He showed that to Michael, and Michael said, pfft. And then he told me that. And then a little while later, he called me, kind of really beseeching, demanding I write a screenplay. He said, you're a good writer, you can write this. I said, I don't want to write that. And then Barbara talked me into it. She was making Stuntman with Peter O'Toole. We're in a nice suite overlooking the ocean, and there's the courtyard down there for the Coronado. Phone rings, and it's Brian. He tried to talk me into it on the phone, and I actually got angry. I said, listen, don't you understand? N-O, I can't do this. If I could, I would, but I can't. I'm not interested. Even if I were interested, I wouldn't know how to even approach it. I know the formula idea, but I don't know how to write it. I don't know what the dialogue would be, the stuff. I don't know. And I hung up on him, disgruntled. Kind of hung up on him, actually. Barbara was watching me, and she said, what are you doing?
I'm scared.
And I said, you saw what I'm doing. And she said, the reason you wanted to option this 3 years ago is because you said you wanted to walk through the front door. You said this is a front door project. And he's asking you to walk through the front door, just like you've been saying you wanted to do, and you're saying no?
Then they came back with a script, which wasn't terrific, but it was interesting.
The very first draft that he did was much smaller in scale than anything that's been on the internet or anything that has been talked about. And it all took place mostly in apartments, a few street scenes, and at the very end, Rachel kills herself.
This was a small movie. That's how I wanted to do it. It's rooms, you know, strange movie, but it's, you know, face-to-face movie. People are talking, and And I had this dream of actors, like the right kind of actors, director. The intellectual aspects of the screenplay were taken from my response to the death of animal life on this planet and what that meant. And that's probably the thing that saw me through it, the first draft, was I had a passion about that, and so my affection for the project was consistent. The first draft I wrote, had a script that was quite a bit like the book. It used the book. And then it transformed itself and evolved quite a bit.
Finally, when I was really looking for something, Brown popped back in again with another script. And the way he put it was he told me that he'd got several students interested. Because I was a friend, he'd let me have a crack of it. And I read it and I thought it was down to
24 hours later, it was like, can we meet? And they wanted to do it. The title changes were everything was serious to me. I was so avid about it. I loved Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? You can't get better than that, come on. And Michael Beebe saying, please, that was not gonna fly. It was a comic book, kind of a big, like a coffee table comic book I found in London called Mechanismo. It's like replicants, gyro, metallic thing. I love that book. And I showed it to Michael Beebe. I said, this is incredible. This is like visually, this is like where we should go. And this is before Ridley. And I said, I want to call it Mechanismo. And I kind of talked him into it. So it was Mechanismo. There was one script over the cover that says Mechanismo.
The title we finally settled on was Dangerous Days, which I loved because it was very much in tune with the much more romantic script that Hampton had written.
I was dead set against it, but I figured I could get a vote in later. But go ahead, and if they'll finance, we'll call it Dangerous Days for the time being. And then Michael Dealey came up with Blade Runner. I'd used it already. It's a term that I got from reading Burroughs. He had a little book. It's called Blade Runner.
Hampton's Blade Runner is defined for the most part by the love story between Deckard, who is a depressed bounty hunter, and Rachel, the biological android created by Eldon Tyrell. Hampton's script from 1980, which is the draft I read, is full of action text, almost poetic in its descriptions.
An empty room, a cot and not much else. He steps in and stands quiet as a hunter sensing the signs, for a place surrounded by greasy hovels that is surprisingly clean, Spartan in fact. The towel by the spotless basin is perfectly folded. Deckard runs 2 fingers over a shelf, no dust. He looks in the wastebasket, wadded up candy wrappers. The bed by the window is neatly made. Deckard looks under it, then runs his hands along both sides of the mattress. The closet. There's one suit in it. He pats it down. Nothing. A shoebox on the floor. He stoops, takes out what looks like a pen from his pocket and carefully traces it over the box. Assured of its harmlessness, he lifts off the lid. It contains a little stack of photos bound with a rubber band. Deckard removes them, goes to the lamp by the balcony window and turns it on. A touching collection of family snapshots, the kind of anonymous stuff sold by the bunch in dusty junk shops. The family dog, Junior on the pony squinting in the sun, Uncle Ben clowning with the kids, the faded Polaroid of Christmas morning, simple pictures of simple folks celebrating the family bond. A curious collection for the likes of Leon, and Deckard studies them with interest.
Rick Deckard is described as someone with the physique of a prizefighter past his prime. The first actor that Hampton wrote the character for was Robert Mitchum, who was famed for his roles in noir films.
Cheer up, Scampy. You'll get out of it all right. You always have.
First of all, Deckard changed right away. I know the guy was a bureaucrat kind of in the book, which I liked. Glasses, briefcase, automaton kind of henpecked. I liked all that. But I think in the first draft I changed, or by the second draft, I started to get noir-y with it.
There is narration in the Hampton Fancher script that Ridley removed.
Ryan's got a liver problem. A couple years back, he handed me a bottle and said, have a drink for another man. I've been drinking for him ever since.
You may smoke, too. I can still enjoy the smell of it. Nice state of affairs when a man has to indulge his vices by proxy.
Every government that could was racing to populate their colonial territory, but immigrants needed incentive. Overpopulation and the greenhouse factor didn't seem to be enough, but owning a human look-alike had lots of appeal. It was a big industry, the competition was stiff, and Tyrell was top of the line. His claim to fame was making a product more human than human, and sometimes the more turned out to be a problem. This wasn't just an escaped Andy who broke his owner's arm. There were 28 people dead and the pressure was on.
Hampton removed Deckard's wife Iran, the Penfield mood organ, mercerism, the empathy box, and the ownership of animals as an important religious practice on Earth. Genetic design is still important to the plot, since almost no one can afford real animals. The fake owl that Rosen tries to bribe Deckard with in Electric Sheep is now real, a sign of Tyrell's wealth and decadence.
Do you like our owl?
It's artificial?
Of course it is.
Gaff is a Hampton Fancher creation, a man working for Bryant who does not exist in Electric Sheep. J.R. Isidore is no longer a chickenhead, but a master genetic designer with Methuselah syndrome.
What's that?
My glands, they grow old too fast.
Is that why you're still on Earth?
Yeah, I couldn't pass the medical.
The addition of Chew and Sebastian as characters that develop the biological androids helped develop the character of Roy Batty from a relatively minor threat to a great anti-villain. He is Deckard's shadow now, not just a simple target to be destroyed, but a boomerang that has come back around to destroy his creator, if his creator will not give him more life.
What seems to be the problem?
Death.
Death. Well, I'm afraid that's a little out of my jurisdiction.
I want more life. Fucker.
Rachel is now a love interest instead of a femme fatale. Hampton's love scene is much more subtle than what Ridley Scott ended up creating.
He's lying in the tub with a drink, eyes half-masked, water up to his chin, bruised and beat, but looking just a little wicked in his balmy luxury. I knew a cop once who was involved in a high-speed chase. They shot out one of his tires and he went over a cliff at 150 miles an hour. They found him in the morning with a broken skull, 6 fractured ribs, and second-degree burns. On the way to the hospital, he made a play for the nurse. He takes a drink, clears his throat. Hey, thought you were supposed to be taking care of me.
What do you need?
He doesn't answer, lies there sipping his drink. Rachel comes in a little uncertain, a little droll, and stands there looking down at him. Don't just stand there looking at me, it's not polite.
What do you want me to do?
Sit. She sits on the edge of the tub. Give me your arm. She's wearing a short-sleeved dress. It's a long, delicate arm, and Deckard holds it, inspecting it like a maestro with a Stradivarius. He looks up at her. You ever take a bath with a man before?
There's a lot I haven't done with a man before.
He's got her hand in the water, and has begun to soap her arm, starting with her wrist and running the bar to her elbow, up and down, slow and slippery. She watches, not quite sure of the ritual. He pulls her closer and runs his hand up higher, molding and pressing, working around her flesh, up and under her arm into the privacy of her dress.
You're getting me wet.
Oh yes. For a moment, Deckard stares at her like some furry-legged satyr in rut. The fingers of his other hand rake through her hair, and into the water she comes.
Later, Rachel is in Deckard's apartment, chastising him for how unkempt it is. He points to a vacuum, and she goes to use it, but Deckard doesn't want to hear the noise. He just wants to watch her vacuum. She feels silly, but he loves to see it. This is the softer seduction that the movie needed to have. One of the most startling differences in Hampton's script is that in the end, unlike any other story, Deckard kills Rachel, because he knows that they can't escape. I understand why this ending was changed, as it is the coldest and least forgiving ending. Fitting for a noir story, but general audiences? The producers thought otherwise. In the Hampton script, you can see the first seeds of the android activist movement mentioned in 2049. Deckard tells us that the Tyrell Corporation has been able to keep things quiet outside of the occasional fanatic bitching about equal rights for Andes, or a trade union proclaiming it was un-American for automatons to take jobs away from humans on the off-world colony.
But what's more American than good old supply and demand? The government needed them, the industry made them, and the church backed them. The big religious boys said that androids, no matter how human, were objects. Only God can make people. I'm not religious, but I was inclined to agree. Otherwise, I'd be out of a job.
This, in and of itself, is rather flippant in regards to the deep questioning that the Deckard from the book does. Hampton introduced the Esper analysis system, which is used by Deckard when he's analyzing the photographs he finds at Leon's apartment. In the movie, Deckard drinks scotch in front of the computer, and the computer shows images as Deckard commands. But in Hampton's script, the Esper system speaks back to Deckard, discussing his findings with him. There is a dialogue and a conflict between the machine and Deckard.
Here's something you might find interesting. They have been built to emulate the human in every way except in its emotional spectrum. However, after a period of time it is only logical that such a mechanism would create its own emotional responses. Hate, love, fear, anger.
I know all that.
What about summary then?
I think we're through for the night.
Mr. Deckard,
Yeah?
do you have something against science?
Not if it works.
And what in your estimation works?
The umbrella. This dynamic was reused and repurposed for Blade Runner 2049 in the form of Kay and Joy.
Mirror data makes a man. A and C and T and G. The alphabet of you. All from 4 symbols. I'm only 2. 1 and 0.
Half as much, but twice as elegant, sweetheart.
To further the 2049 comparisons, there's a scene in which Deckard is taking the test that involves his mental focus, similar to the baseline test that Kay takes in 2049. Deckard is supposed to follow the hypnotic direction of the interviewer. Deckard, however, is distracted from his given task of driving a Duesenberg down a road. Instead, he drifts off into thinking about a woman bending over to expose her ass. Leon is similar to the Electric Sheep character of Catelli, and has more screen time in Hampton Fancher's script than the final film. Hampton created an entire scene where Leon attempts to drink Deckard under the table before killing him in retribution for the death of Zora.
Oh, this is the bar scene with the ants and all that stuff?
No, the one you had with the cockroaches.
The cockroaches? No, he runs into Leon. He doesn't, it looks like he doesn't know that Leon is Leon. And Leon is acting like somebody else. And he brings out this little box of, and there's, is it cockroaches? Deckard's playing really dumb, and Leon's playing like a Russian. And then at the end, something is said by Leon that makes us know that he knows who Deckard is. And Deckard realizes that he's been busted, and he's probably going to be killed. And he tries to get away. Then the whole wake up and die thing happens after that. And then she comes back. Because he's called her, so she knows where it is. But I don't remember the dialogue. It's in one or two of the scripts.
Interestingly enough, the scene that starts the movie off with Holden conducting a void conf test on Leon is only backstory in the book, referred to by Brian.
Give it to Holden. He's good.
I did. He can breathe okay as long as nobody unplugs him. Not good enough.
Another major standout in Hampton's draft is that Tyrell has a young, beautiful wife, children, and a staff complete with a bodyguard. Instead of beating Tyrell at chess, Batty is able to see Tyrell because he goes with Sebastian to deliver a birthday present Sebastian has made for one of Tyrell's sons. It is a griffin that hatches from an egg, a completely mythical creature made alive by genetic design. In this story, Batty not only kills Tyrell and Sebastian, but the entire family, the staff, and the bodyguard. Batty also kills the night watchman, Mr. Deacham, that lives in the same building as Sebastian, another figure that never made it into the final cut. Irmgard Batty is changed to Mary, a character that Ridley could not afford to keep in the movie. She is described as an American dream mom, right out of Father Knows Best. Pris introduces her to Sebastian as her aunt.
Hello, honey. What's burning?
I am. Hello, dear.
Oh, cornbread.
It's a cake.
Is it a pancake?
It's a birthday cake. I mean, well, at this point, I really don't know myself.
Hampton had Deckard carrying a laser, but for whatever reason, aesthetic or practical, there are no lasers or laser tubes in Blade Runner. The fight between Batty and Deckard is much longer, featuring more dialogue from Batty.
Not very sporting to fire on an unarmed opponent. I thought you were supposed to be good. Aren't you the good man?
Batty is dispatched with a laser shot, but his iron grip almost causes Deckard to fall off the edge of a building. Starkly different from the final scene, which is the poetic coup de grace and one of the most memorable moments of the film.
I've seen things you people wouldn't believe.
It's easy to look at Hampton and think he's a snarky, snobbish figure.
I didn't like the book and didn't respond to it in a heartfelt way or anything, or a literary way even. I was looking for something commercial. And I thought, okay, cowboy goes after androids, brings back the heads, And so there was a through line I saw structurally that I could never get onto in my own work. And I thought, okay, that's something I could do, maybe produce that.
But the other side of that is the notion that after Philip K. Dick, Hampton is the core of Blade Runner.
When I got into it and looked harder, I found a lot of things that were close and pertinent, I thought, to the existential conditions of our kind and also to the situation of the planet in this century. And so the ecology was really important to me because the loss of animal life, and then a world where animals were worth a lot of money because of that. And then the definition that everybody goes for, what is a person? What is personhood? And for me, it was about empathy. And that was really important to me and will always be important because I think that's the solution to our problems, is feeling somebody else's pain. And to the extent that we can, we succeed. To the extent that we don't, we get divorced. We separate. We have our selfish secrets.
He came up with the vast majority of new concepts and the idea of making it as a noir. It was Hampton who saw the commercial viability of the product only a few years after the book had come out. Noir was past its prime, and science fiction hadn't reached the blockbuster action fun of Star Wars. Aliens didn't exist. Star Trek was just a television series without a movie of its own. Hampton had the vision to see science fiction was going to happen soon, and believed in the project enough to spend a year of his life writing the initial script. Then again, from a director's perspective, it's completely understandable that Ridley wanted Hampton to redraft his work to actually play into the commercial aspect that Hampton himself stated he wanted from the product. The protagonist killing off the character's love interest, and the murder of an entire family at the hands of the villain in a big-budget spectacle might be seen as too much for popular audiences. Hampton was slow in his process and earned the nickname Happen Faster from the producers who wanted to get the project in order. However, that said, Hampton dutifully completed 10 drafts of the script and was burnt out and frustrated with the process by the time that Ridley informed him that they had found another writer through Tony Scott. That writer was David Webb Peoples.
Ridley never came right out and said, if you don't do what I'm telling you to do, then we'll get somebody else to do it. That never was said. Ridley was shy, he's manipulative, whatever. He didn't tell me.